I swear I can sit down in a vlog and talk about a book in 15 minutes and not have to do any retakes, but then I sit down to do a plan video and I am on like take 374. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing the September reading wrap-up. I read a lot of books this month. I had a great reading month. I had nothing below a 3-star read. I enjoyed every single book that I read. I have some new all-time favorites, and it was just really great time. So let's get into it. So this month I read 18 books. 2 of them I'm not going to be talking about because they are for a secret vlog that I'm working on that's almost done. Should be out next week, probably Monday, and I'm excited about that one. I really want to talk about those books, but I can't because it's a secret, so you'll hear about those soon. So all of the books that I read this month were romance, except for one. I read one middle grade. I feel like maybe the reason I had such a good reading month is because I read all romance instead of trying to, you know, read other things. Not that reading other things is bad, but I just was on a romance kick again, and that's what I really like reading best. So here we go. Okay, so we're going to start from the 3-star reads and work our way up to the 5-star reads. So the first 3-star book that I have is Rogue with a Brogue by Suzanne Enoch. I read this as part of my reading vlog. I'll link all the reading vlogs down below, so if you want more of my in-depth thoughts about these, you can check those out. I did a reading vlog that was all about 3 historical romance authors that were new to me and that were less well known that my Instagram followers had recommended I check out. So this was one of the books, one of the authors that was suggested to me. This ended up being the 2nd book in the series. I've heard the first is a little bit better, so I really want to check that out. So this book is basically sort of like a Highland Romeo and Juliet-ish type of story without the tragedy. This book follows Aaron McLaury and Mary Campbell, and their families are feuding rival families in Scotland. And they meet at a ball, and they instantly have this insane attraction and a ton of chemistry, and the sparks that they had was just so delightful. So they end up trying to still have a relationship and stay together, even though their families hate each other and they should not be able to marry. So then they end up on a, like, traveling to try and get away and live their own life so that they can be together. I really enjoyed the first part of this book. I felt like the first half was really well done. I really loved the chemistry between the couple. But after that, once they got together, it was just a little bit boring. I didn't really like it that much. I felt like the plot wasn't strong enough to make up for the lack of tension in the relationship, and so it was just sort of, it ended, it was okay. It wasn't bad at all. It was good. I mean, it was good enough that I would read more from this author again. Like I said, I really want to check out the first one, which I think is like Mad, Bad, and Dangerous in Plaid or something like that. But, yeah, this one was okay. It was good. So, but isn't that cover lovely? Oh my gosh. This is one of the prettiest covers I've ever seen. And the next 3-star book is actually one of the most disappointing reads for me this year. I had such high hopes for this book, and that is From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout. Now, I am a huge fan of Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have an entire vlog dedicated to my feelings on this book in particular. So you can check that out if you want to see exactly how I thought and see my reaction to parts that were pretty intense. But while I liked this book overall, the first half of the book is incredibly slow, and the second half of the book is really quite good. But I just felt like because there was such a, I mean, this is a big book, but because there was such a difference in how the first book was compared to the second book, I don't feel like it deserved higher than a 3-star for me, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the ending. I really enjoyed the romance in here. The romance in here was fabulous. I loved it. I just wish there had been more, and I wish there had been more clear plot in this, and I realized I didn't summarize once again. So this book is a fantasy world. It's entirely fantasy. I've heard some people call it high fantasy, but I don't necessarily know that I agree with that. But this is about Poppy, who is the maiden. I still don't really know what that means, other than basically she can't be seen, looked upon, or touched, and her bodyguard's name is Hawk. So it's kind of a bodyguard, maiden, and, you know, the guard, which I love that trope. But there is an overarching plot. I still am not 100% sure of what it is, other than there's like a lot of court intrigue, there's a lot of different magical or, you know, fantasy creatures, like there are vampires and, you know, all kinds of fun things. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know how much to describe of this. I talked about this book a lot. It was a romantic fantasy. It was good. It was good if you just go in knowing the first half is slow. I would recommend listening to this on audiobook because I feel like that was way better than reading it physically. So 3 out of 5 stars. It was good. I still love Jennifer L. Armentrout. She's one of my favorite authors, but this one just didn't live up to the hype for me. And the next book on my list is The Luckiest Lady in London by Sherry Thomas. This was another one that I did in the reading vlog about historical romance authors who were less well known to me. This book was, honestly, just a pure delight. So we're in the 4-star reads now. I don't think I mentioned that. All the rest, these books are 4 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was full of a lot of good humor and a lot of wonderfully romantic moments. It was really well done and really thoughtful too. It also had a lot of like more deeper emotional moments. Like, it wasn't just a fun happy book. It had a few kind of dark and not really unsettling but uncomfortable moments in it that are weaved in throughout the plot. But I really like Sherry Thomas's writing. I think she does a great job of working comedy into her historical romances. So this book is about Louisa, who needs to marry well to support her sister. She has a very sick sister who she needs to make sure she secures a good match as for a husband so that she has means to support her sister. She meets Felix, who is the Marquess of Wentworth, and he seems to be instantly taken with her, and he can't really figure out why that is. And when the end of the season comes around and no one else has proposed to Louisa, he does, and so she sort of reluctantly accepts because he is kind of a playboy, very well known, and that he kind of plays around with women, and she's not really sure how she feels about that, but the offer of the financial security of his marriage is so strong that she accepts. And so it's really a lot of them in their marriage trying to work out a relationship so that they can still be happy, and they have this really powerful attraction. But the Duke, the Marquess of Wentworth, he's really kind of hiding some darker secrets and a little bit of trauma in his past history, and so as she starts to uncover that, they have to work through that and see how they're going to try and make this marriage work and be happy together. I really felt like this was a great look at how certain types of trauma can affect a marriage, and this is something that's always interesting to me in historical romances, is because typically they're always an arranged marriage or a marriage of convenience, and so you have these people who are thrown into this relationship and they have to still try and figure out how they're going to work together with this person, even though they didn't necessarily know everything that we would know today when we're making this same decision for marriage. So this was a really good book, and it really made me a fan of Sherry Thomas, and I am definitely going to be checking out more books from her in the future because I really enjoyed this. And the next book on my list is A Hunger Like No Other by Cressley Cole. Whew, so I loved this book. I loved this book so much. I felt like it was so fun. Once I started reading this, I had the hardest time putting it down. It was so compelling. I love this series so much. I also have a vlog dedicated to reading this book compared to a historical romance that is later on in my list. So The Hunger Like No Other is the first book in the Immortals After Dark series by Cressley Cole, which is basically a whole series of paranormal creatures working to find their fated mates. So this one is the very first one, and this follows Lachlan, who is a werewolf, or as they call them, a Lycae, and he has been kept in a vampire stronghold for centuries, and he has been tortured and traumatized, and it's really kind of horrific things he has to go to, when suddenly he smells his mate walking above ground because he's been kept underground, and he breaks free from the prison in a very dramatic way to get to his mate. And his mate is Emma, who is a half vampire. And of course, vampires and werewolves are sort of like oil and water. They're forbidden to be together. They don't like each other. They hate each other. So there's that sort of dynamic there at play too. And I just honestly absolutely love this series. I feel like it is so freaking good. And I'm probably one of the few people who haven't read this if they have any interest in paranormal romance at all. But man, was it good. I did give this book a 4 out of 5 stars because I feel like there were a few scenes with consent there's one scene in particular, not the beginning scene. The beginning scene is a little rough, so if you're going to read this, go in knowing that that's a bit of an issue, but it gets better along the way. Definitely gets better. And one of the things that is so great about these books and this book in particular is seeing the growth of Lachlan, where he sort of enters in as kind of just a complete alpha douchebag to, at the end, where his character is. But there was one scene in sort of maybe the middle that was a little unsettling to me. So that was really why I gave this a 4-star, but based on how much I enjoyed it, it would be a 5-star for sure. But because of that one scene, I just feel like it just kind of made me feel like, So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but really super good, very enjoyable. The next 2 books are also part of that series, so we are reading these as a group of friends on Instagram, the Immortals After Dark series. We've taken a little bit of a break, and we'll pick that back up in November. This was book 2 in the series, No Rest for the Wicked. So this follows, oh my gosh, I love this book so much, you guys. This follows Sebastian, who is a vampire, and he was turned against his will. Like, he didn't want to become a vampire, and so he's really sort of hated his existence the whole time that he's been a vampire. And the mate that he finds in here is Katerin the Cold, who is a Valkyrie warrior, or like assassin type of thing. And she hates vampires. And so they feel the fated mate pull, and they're just instantly drawn together, and their relationship is amazing, and Sebastian is amazing, and he's one of my favorite heroes. Like, I love Lachlan is still my favorite hero in the series, but Sebastian is right up there with him. So the fun thing about this book too is that it follows sort of this big trial or competition where they travel around the world, and it's almost like an Amazing Race type of thing where they have to find treasures, and like all of the immortal creatures have to do that, and it's really pretty cool. That was fun too. But the thing I loved most was obviously the romance. It was fantastic. I loved this. I gave this book a 4.5 out of 5 stars. And the next book is also part of that series, and that is Wicked Deeds on a Winter's Night by Kresley Cole. This is book 3 in the Immortals After Dark series. This book follows Bowen, who is a Lycae werewolf, who has lost his mate. She died almost as soon as he found her many years ago, and so he's been living his life without his mate, which is very painful and traumatic for the werewolves especially. They have a very strong bond with their mate, and so he is really just a sad sort of, like, he's so sad. In the first 2 books, I was so excited to get to his book because he's just like this heartbroken little puppy, and you just want him to be happy. But he's kind of a jerk in a lot of this book. I still really liked this story, but this is my least favorite of the 3 that I have read so far. His fated mate in this book is Marie, who is a witch, and Bowen's family has a really long history of hating witches and having really bad experiences with them, so he comes in with a lot of prejudice to her, and she just feels really super drawn to him and is not quite sure why. This book also covers parts of the same competition that was in the second book. Just really fun. This whole series is just fabulous. It's great. Each one follows a different hero and heroine, and it's their romance, and I love it. It's great. Perfect time to read this is October. Wonderful. The next book that I read that was a 4-star is Desperate Measures by Katie Robert. Now, this was a short novella, and this is a villain romance. Now, I say romance, but it is a romance, but it's really very much based on their physical relationship. And this book was honestly just fascinating to me. I just really love the dynamic of Jasmine and Jafar. That's who the villain romance is, and Desperate Measures is Jasmine and Jafar. It was really interesting to me. That is a character dynamic that I've always sort of been interested in, like, especially even in that cartoon when you see Jasmine and Jafar, and I was always sort of like, but what would happen if, like, they actually ended up together? Like, so I feel like this really hit the spot for me because I deeply love a villain romance, and I just enjoyed the heck out of this. This was a very short read. It was super fun. It didn't have a lot of plot development, nor really as much character development as I wanted, which is the only reason I gave it a 4 instead of a 5-star, because I really wanted to see her explore she had a lot of great meat to the characters, how conflicted they were, all of their internal struggles, and how, you know, they were such interesting characters, and I really wanted that to be explored a little bit more, and I just felt like we didn't have enough time to do that. But what we did get, I really enjoyed. I just was wishing for a little bit more. And my next 4-star read is A Duke by Default by Alyssa Cole. This book is so fun. So this is part of her Reluctant Royal series. This book follows Portia Hobbs, who is a New York socialite who is a self-described hot mess, and she finds out that there is a position for an apprentice swordsmaker in Scotland. So she feels like she has a set of skills that she would be great for that, so she takes the position and goes to Scotland, and there she meets Tavish, who is the swordsmaker, and sparks start to fly. They have a whole lot of fun of the push and play, will they, won't they. Tons of sexual tension in this book. It was so, so good. And she comes to find out that he is the secret son of a duke. This book was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. I do feel like the plot kind of was hurried up towards the end, and I also felt like I kind of wished that tension and the sparks and chemistry that was there earlier in the relationship had maybe been postponed a little bit, because I felt like once they got together it was kind of gone, and that was the funnest part for me. But overall, a really enjoyable read. It was very fun. I loved it a lot. Okay, and now we are into the 5-star reads. So the first 5-star read that I had was one of my favorites by one of my favorite authors, and that is Daring and the Duke by Sarah McLean. I love this book so much. I love this series so much. This book is not my favorite book in the series, but I still feel like it's a 5-star read because it was just so good. So this is her Bare Knuckle Bastard series. You follow a group of... They were raised together as kids. They're not technically brother and sister, but they were all raised together. So this follows Grace and Ewan, who is the Duke of Marwick. And you see them throughout the other 2 books, sort of like Ewan is essentially the villain in the first 2 books. And so this story of seeing what actually happened to him and why he did what he did to his, you know, the other kids that he grew up with was really quite interesting and also a little bit heartbreaking. And watching Grace, just her strength and her resiliency and how much she struggled to overcome and how well she did in her life and what a strong, independent woman she was. I just loved it so much. This is one of the best happy endings that I've ever read, and I love this series with my whole heart and soul, and it's perfect, and I think you should read it if you haven't because it's amazing. Hi, I'm back. Sorry if I'm in a different spot. My memory card was full. So, the next book on my 5-star list is Along Came a Duke by Elizabeth Boyle. I adored this book. This was lighthearted, sweet, fun, happy. This was just everything I wanted. This was a perfect... If you need like a light read, a light fun read, I would go for Elizabeth Boyle. She just has the happiest reads, I think, and they're just really, really fun and enjoyable. Also, I need to show you the step back because isn't it so pretty? I love it so much. So this book follows Tabitha, who is a poor orphan spinster. She really kind of has a not so happy life. She lives with her aunt and uncle, and it sort of has a little bit of Cinderella vibes in that they make her do all the work and she doesn't really get to do any of the fun stuff that their daughters get to do. When all of a sudden she finds out that she would inherit a great fortune as long as she marries a certain man that her uncle who left her the money has said she needs to marry. When she meets him, she instantly realizes that he is kind of a terrible person and that she could never love him, but she doesn't really know what else to do because of, you know, this is her only option to get away from her aunt and uncle and have some freedom. She ends up meeting the Duke of Preston, who is a very well-known rake. So he's definitely a playboy, but there's something about Tabitha that really strikes him and he's really attracted to, and he doesn't quite know why. She has a very feisty, sort of rebellious attitude, and you can see that he's definitely drawn to that about her. So he takes it upon himself to try and find a way to save her from this terrible, passionless marriage that she would get into, but he doesn't know that the reason she needs to marry him is so that she can get some financial freedom in her life. So this is just a lot of fun. There are a lot of almost like sitcom level capers in here that are super fun and enjoyable, and it was just so great. And I loved the happily ever after. I loved the relationship between Tabitha and Preston. I thought they had great chemistry. It was just super well done. I loved it. And the next book on my 5-star reads is again The Magic by Lisa Kleypas. I love this book so much. This is one of my favorite reads of the year. I absolutely freaking adore this book. It just makes me sigh. It's so swoony. It's just perfect. So this book is about McKenna and Aline, Aline is a wealthy daughter of some type of members of the aristocracy in England, I'm not entirely sure what, and McKenna is the stable boy and a servant. And when the story starts out, they're like teenagers, late teenagers, and they are starting to have a relationship and have feelings for each other, and then they end up separated, and it's really heartbreaking to see them separate. And McKenna ends up feeling like it's Aline's fault, so he's pretty upset with her and heartbroken. So many years later, I think they're in their 30s actually, he comes back and she sees him and she feels the same exact feelings that she felt when she was 17, and he feels the same way about her. They have an instant chemistry that is powerful and beautiful, but he has come back to get revenge on her for breaking his heart. So it ends really well, one of the best happily ever afters. McKenna is one of my favorite heroes ever. He is full of so much passion for her and so much love and tenderness, and even when he's trying to get revenge on her, you can see that he's so conflicted about it because he feels so much for her, you know, and he still always has this hope that she feels for him too. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is one of my favorite romances of all time. I adored it. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And now, the next book on my list is the middle grade book that I read with my son. This is Wizard for Hire, Magic Required. So this is a trilogy of middle grade books, and this one is the last one. Me and my son have read these together. He reads his separately and I read mine separately, and then we kind of talk about it. So it's basically a buddy read with my son. But we love them. They are so much fun. If you have kids and you want to find them some type of magic, funny, lighthearted, silly book that is kind of like Harry Potter, I would recommend this. This is a really fun read and great, especially for boys that are maybe reluctant to read. This is really fun. So this whole series follows Ozzy, who is a teenager. He's like 13 or 14, I think, and he's an orphan. And he hires a wizard named Rin that he sees just posted up on a bulletin board, Wizard for Hire. He hires him to help him find his parents, who he thinks are still alive. And it's just basically their antics, and it's just a lot of fun. And there's also a mechanical bird that is basically Ozzy's only best friend, and he is a mechanical bird, but he's also like alive, and so there's magic there too. It's just really fun. It's a fun middle grade series. Even if you're an adult and you want something lighthearted and silly and fun, this is a great series to try. So when I rate this and review it, I always ask my son, okay, what do you rate this out of 5 stars? And he said 5 stars. So that's why I have it a 5-star read, because he really is the one who would know if it's a 5-star read or not. And the next book on my 5-star reads is The Rayquest by Scarlett Peckham. I freaking love this book. This is another one that is one of my favorite books of the year, and I will probably never stop talking about it because I loved it so much, you guys. This is deeply feminist and dark and emotional and just so good. Oh my gosh. Okay, so this book is about Seraphina, who is sort of like a warrior for women's rights and equal rights between the sexes. She is very passionate about that, so much so that she is writing her memoirs that will expose the man who ruined her, who is a very powerful man, and you know, it would be bad if it got found out that he was the one who ruined her. She is also a Rayquest, so she is the gender swapped role of a rake. So basically the female version of a playboy. She enjoys all aspects of that, and she also really loves wine, and so there's a little bit of a trigger warning there, maybe for alcoholism too. And she ends up meeting Adam, who moves into her small little oceanside town. He is a widow and he has 2 young children, and moment they meet, they have instant chemistry and this instant attraction and sort of even like a spiritual level pull where they just feel drawn to each other. But they're both sort of like fighting that because he's not quite so sure if he's ready for any type of a relationship, and even a physical one, because he's still remembering, you know, his dead wife who he loved dearly. And she's struggling because she's feeling more for him than she wants to. It's not just physical for her, so she's fighting with that too. There is an overarching plot about what happens when her memoirs are released and how that may separate them even more. It's just absolutely beautiful. I am a huge fan of Scarlett Peckham. She is an incredible writer. I feel like this is a very important book, as well as just being really fun. I don't even want to say fun, just enjoyable to read. Like, there are definitely some dark moments in here. This I would say is a darker romance for sure. But it's just so good, you guys. It's just so enjoyable. This book is going to stay with me forever. I love it. I tabbed up a few things. It's just fantastic. And the next book I read that on my 5-star list is Tycoon. This is a novella by Joanna Shupe. This is the first prequel in her Knickerbocker series, which is a series of historical romances set in the Gilded Age in New York. This follows Ted and Clara, who meet on a train. Clara is running from some people who are coming after her. She sees Ted, comes up to him, gives him a kiss and a hug, and says, "Hey, husband," and tries to get him to play her husband so that she can be protected a little bit. It's a very short book, and it's a very engaging book, and it's a very fun book. I loved it so much. I felt like their relationship was wonderful. I thought that the plot was very fast moving. This was, honestly, it took me like an hour and a half to read, and I just started it and didn't stop until I was done. I just loved it. It was great. The next book I read was a reread for me, and that is The Highwaymen by Kerrigan Byrne. I listened to this on audio because I feel like the audio narrator is really great, and I just really loved it. This follows Dorian and Farah, who sort of enter into a marriage of convenience, because Dorian is the only one who can protect Farah from a secret that she has that people are trying to get out of her and would kill for her to have, and they definitely have a very dark history. Farah is also a widow, and it's just, I just adore their love story. It's just so powerful. This book is just so good. I feel like I never do it justice. It's a great one. I loved it. And the last book on my September wrap-up is Indigo by Beverly Jenkins. This is another one of my all-time favorite reads. I just adored this book so much, and I listened to it on audio, loved it so much, and had to go get the paperback, even though this is actually the self-published version, because this is the only one available unless you are lucky and you find one on eBay, which I have not been able to find the OG cover, but I still think this is pretty, and I just love having the printed copy of it. So this book is about Hester, who was a freed slave, and she's now a very devoted member to the Underground Railroad, and she is one day given the assignment to care and help heal a man who has been injured that is brought to her. His name is Galen, and later we come to find out that he is the Black Daniel, who is a vital member of the Underground Railroad. And it's their romance. There are a lot of really subtle and not so subtle moments in here about the racial inequality and the struggles that black slaves, freed or not, really had to go to, that was just honestly very heartbreaking and very eye-opening. This is a very powerful book, and their love story, so good. Like, Galen is one of my favorite heroes also, because he is just determined to win Hester, even though she kind of is very hesitant to fully accept him. You know, he just keeps on after his woman because he wants her. This is a beautiful book. Highly recommend this if you haven't read it yet. The audio, at last I checked, was still on Audible Escape, so if you have Audible Escape, listen to this before the month is over because it's fantastic. Alright, that's it. Those are all the books I read in September. Let me know what you read in September, or maybe what your favorite was, or what you think I should try, and also let me know if you've read any of these and what your feelings were on them too. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you in my next video.